Alors on va commencer. Donc, aujourd'hui, on va parler de Évidence. Évidence, qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est un notebook SQL. Par hasard, en allant sur donc le blog de Motherduck qui est en fait la version distribuée de DocDB, un SGDBR qui permet donc de faire du SQL, d'exécuter des requêtes, mais de manière vraiment in memory, donc uniquement en utilisant la mémoire de son ordinateur. Et c'est un système de gestion de base de données distribué, un système de gestion de base de données, désolé, relationnel, qui permet donc de, d'effectuer des requêtes, et c'est orienté colonne. Orienté colonne, ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire donc que donc c'est optimisé pour tout ce qui est data, euh, analyse de données. Et donc, en parcourant le blog, je suis tombé sur Évidence pour justement gérer tout ce qui était donc la visualisation. Et alors, ça m'a intéressé parce que ça paraissait plutôt pas mal. Et le problème, c'est qu'en creusant de plus en plus, ben, je me suis rendu compte que ben, sur YouTube, il n'y avait pas forcément beaucoup de sources. Donc, j'ai commencé à regarder la documentation, à aller plus loin. Et après, j'ai été sur leur Slack. Et là, j'ai eu la chance donc de rencontrer Archie Saré-Wood, qui est donc le Head of Communication de chez Évidence. Ensemble, il va nous montrer comment fonctionne Évidence et comment mener en fait un premier POC, donc un premier test avec une base de données, euh, ou tout simplement en utilisant d'autres outils. Donc, DuckDB et DBT, les outils de la moderne data stack. Donc, je vais laisser à présent Archie se présenter et puis surtout présenter dans un premier temps Évidence et après le use case. Donc, ce qu'on va faire, c'est que Archie, en fait, il vient de Toronto. Donc, il va tout nous présenter en anglais. Mais bien sûr, si vous avez des questions, il n'y a pas de souci. Vous pouvez les poser en français. Et après, moi, je vais les traduire. Bon, c'est parti alors. Top. Archie, maintenant, t'es live.
Merci, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. So I work at Evidence, and I am the head of community at Evidence. And as Kevin said, we just recently met on Slack, and he said it'd be great if we could do together a short presentation about and a hands-on demo about how Evidence works. So I will start sharing my screen.
Yeah, for sure. I will let you share your screen. And now the floor is yours.
Great. So I am head of community at Evidence, and what that means is I am one of the maintainers of our open source project. Because it's an open source tool, we get pull requests from people who are using the tool and with new features and new ideas. And part of what I do is I am responsible for that. And then also, whenever people are using it and they have questions, we have a Slack community, and I'm the person who's there to answer questions and help you get started with Evidence. So I'm going to do three things. I'm going to talk about what is Evidence a little bit, and then a little bit about why you should use Evidence when it's really useful. And then I'll spend most of the time just doing a short demo of how you can use Evidence with DBT, and that's going to be a hands-on keyboard demo. So, we're gonna make a project together live. Cool. So, what is Evidence? Evidence is a tool to make really polished business intelligence reports, and you can do that just using SQL and Markdown. And here I've just got an example report that we have in our sort of example library, and it's showing for a fictional business how the average order value for their products is varying over time. You can see a lot of different things in this example. You can see, there's a line chart here. We've also been able to annotate the line chart. And below it, we then have a bunch of different metrics and KPIs for the business. and we're showing, how things are changing. And then, this is just a screenshot, but for this business, there's a page for the marketing team, for the operations team, for the merch team. So there's a lot of, you have a lot of power with evidence to display the information how you want in a way that's useful for your readers, but also to organize the information in a way that's really easy for your stakeholders and for your team to navigate. So that's what evidence is. It's a tool for building reporting, but how does it work? What makes evidence pretty different is that it's configured entirely as code. So the syntax is pretty easy. It's markdown, so you have like a hash and then a space that's going to make a header. And then you've got SQL inline in the markdown. So this triple backtick here is the markdown syntax for a code fence. And then I've named this query my query. And then inside the query, I'm selecting from a table. And then the other thing that evidence has built in is a variety of connectors to all the major sort of databases and cloud warehouses. So, Snowflake, BigQuery, Amazon Redshift, etc. But then also, local files like DuckDB or SQLite or CSVs, you can also use as evidence. So you've got a lot of options for which sources you want to bring in. And then once you've run your SQL queries, you can then use the results of those queries in a variety of components that we have. So we've got a bar chart here, but there's all the charts you might need to use in your organization we have in our charting library. So what evidence does is it takes this markdown and then it turns this into a website. So it renders it into a website where your code turns into queries which are run and return data, and components which are rendering charts. And what's pretty unique about evidence, unlike most BI tools which need like a SaaS login for the people to go and access the reports, evidence builds static websites. So that means it's just building HTML, CSS, and JavaScript outputs, which means you can host them basically anywhere. Anywhere that can host a static website, you can deploy evidence to. So popular ones like Netlify, Vercel, Cloudflare Pages, or GitLab Pages, all great options, especially if you're trying to play with something yourself. But if you want to deploy in a more of an enterprise setting, you can deploy on AWS or Azure or GCP. They all have good static hosting options services as well. And then alongside that, we as a business also offer a commercial side, which is Evidence Cloud, which is kind of the easiest way to host an evidence project. And then the final thing is that evidence is fully compliant to web standards. So anything you can't achieve in like the core evidence syntax, you can break out into HTML and just do anything that's a valid HTML also works in evidence. So that can be a really good escape hatch. If it's something really custom you want to do, you can use anything that's possible on a website is basically possible in evidence. You don't need to know web standards and web language to use evidence, but you can extend it like that.
Okay, so if I understood really well, you can use JavaScript, you can use HTML to enhance your website with evidence, right?
That's correct. You don't have to, and there's a lot of built-in stuff, but if you want to do something custom, you can use HTML, JavaScript, CSS on top of your site. It can be really powerful.
Thank you.
So why use evidence with DBT? It's a really powerful combination because the tooling together, it's very lightweight. You can set up evidence and DBT in 10 minutes. We're going to do it in a second. I'll show you how quick it is. So you don't have to spin up, a bunch of reporting tools. You don't have to sign up for subscriptions or open accounts. You can get this all working on your computer. Also, everything is code, and that's something that's really pretty different to most BI platforms. So not only the queries as code, but also all the visualization as code. And because you're doing DBT as well, also all your transformation is code. And that means you can You can version control everything. You can commit it to Git. And so if you're working with a team, you can put your whole process for building reports behind a pull request process so that everything is checked by other people in your team to check it looks okay. And you can also run automated testing against dbt and automated testing against evidence so that you are never going to deliver broken charts to your users. And that's really quite unique. Like there's very few tools where you could test not only the queries to check that they run, but also your charts to check that they're valid. Both Evidence and dbt are open source. Evidence is licensed under the MIT license. I think dbt is under Apache. So you can use this combination for pretty much anything. There's no restrictions there. And then the final thing that's really cool is that because Evidence is building static websites, the data that is in the web that is displayed to the user is actually cached inside the website when you deploy it, which means that the loading is pretty much instant. So unlike most BI tools, which will connect to the database on the user loading, Evidence, all the data that their user needs to explore is already baked in to the app and therefore will be available pretty much instantly. You change a filter, you're going to get less than a second, microseconds latency until that data updates. So that's it. We're going to go do our demo now.
So far, so good. Great. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to start from this repository here. Maybe Kevin, you can share this link in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. I will.
And I've chosen this start because it uses the open source version of dbt, but also because it has this really quick script that you can use that will set up everything for you, and you can just paste this in and it's just going to work. So it's like a really, really fast way to get started. Okay, so let me move this to the side, and I'm going to open VS Code. Okay, so I'm going to open a terminal, and I'm going to paste in these instructions from the repository. And this is going to do a few different things. So the first thing it does is it clones the repository and then goes into the folder where the clone has been made. It then creates a Python virtual environment and activates the environment. It checks that pip is up to date and then installs the requirements, the Python requirements from the dbt repository. And then it builds and serves the dbt docs. And I can tell this is all finished now because it's actually done all of this for me. So I can see that here, this has all worked because I can now look at the database and I'm getting results here. Before I go any further though, I'm going to get into this directory that I just opened because I'm currently not inside that in VS Code. So I'm going to go to a new open, and then I'm going to go to Archie, jaffleshop.tv. Okay, and then, I did this earlier, so I need to move to the trash for the thing. So this is the project in its original state. So we've got a few different things here. We've got just a normal dbt project. It's got a models file. That's where you keep your dbt models, where you're writing your SQL transformations. And then it's also got a seeds directory, and that's where the raw data for this example that we're going to be using is kept. It's just in CSVs. We have a raw customers CSV, a raw orders CSV, and a raw payments CSV. They're pretty small data sets. Okay, and I can check that, let me get rid of this. I can check that everything's working correctly. So if I go dbt run, then it runs all my models, which is working. And then if I go dbt docs serve again, then it's going to build my docs site. And I can see, if I look at my database, that I've got not only the raw data in this file, but I've also got the model data. So this customers table and these orders tables, these are the transformed, cleaned data that we're going to use for the next step. So dbt is working, it's set up, it's running. That was really fast. For the next step, I'm going to create evidence project inside my dbt project. So how do I do that? I'm going to go to the evidence docs, docs.evidence.dev, and I'm going to make this window a bit wider. I'm going to go into install evidence. And because I'm using dbt, I'm going to go down to the instructions around how to install evidence with dbt. So the first thing it says is to change directory into where my dbt project is. Well, I've actually already done that, so I don't need to do that. But then I'm going to go to the next step. So this is going to copy an evidence project into my report. So it's just made this one here. That's great. And then next, I'm going to do these two steps, which is going to install and run evidence. So I'm going to do the install. And it's going to start running. And there's kind of two folders that are interesting inside evidence here. We've got one, which is the pages folder. And that's where we keep all of our markdown, where we're going to create our reports. And then the second thing we've got here is we've got the sources directory, and that's where I configure the connections to my different data sources. And it's already spun up a local server for me. So basically now, this on the left-hand side is showing the code that I have, and then on the right-hand side, I can see how that code is rendering. And if I make changes and save, then it's just going to update in my browser. So that's very cool. Evidence is working, but it's currently showing this data set that came with evidence, and I don't want to use that. I want to use the data that I made earlier with dbt. So I'm going to go into the settings, and I'm going to add a new data source. I'm going to make this a bit wider. And it's a DuckDB data source, so I'm going to select DuckDB, and the data source that comes with dbt is called Jaffle Shop. A Jaffle is like some kind of sandwich, I think. So I'm going to call it Jaffle Shop. And confirm. And then the file name, when you run dbt with this example, it creates this file called jaffleshop.duckdb. So I'm going to call it jaffleshop.duckdb, confirm. So then if I go into my sources folder that I was looking at earlier, I now have two connections. I have the default evidence one that came with it, and I have Jaffle Shop, which is the one I'm going to use now. I'm not quite done, because if I look at this one here, I can see that I have my DuckDB inside this folder, whereas the DuckDB that I'm using here is just in the root of the project. So I'm going to create a copy of that, and I put it inside the Jaffle Shop. And then I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to open my terminal again. And if I, before I start creating reports, I have to tell evidence what tables I want to get out of Jaffle Shop, this DuckDB. So I do that with a SQL file. So I know there are two tables in there that I was interested in. There's one called customers. So I'm going to do customers.sql. And I'm going to go select star from customers, because the table is called customers inside DuckDB. But this could be also a connection to Snowflake or something like that. Okay, so I've got, it tells me that's worked. Customers finished 100 rows. I'm also going to get one for the orders, because I know that's a table as well. .sql select star from orders.
Archie, I do have a small question.
Yeah.
So I have seen that if you have you have made a copy of Jaffel shop.docdb inside
Yes.
the sources. So it need to be inside the sources, and inside the sources it has to be inside a folder.
Yes, so this folder is created automatically. So when I went to this menu and I created a new source, it automatically created this Jaffel Shop folder for me.
Yeah.
If I have a DuckDB file, it has to be inside that folder. But if you have a cloud data warehouse or something, if you're using Snowflake, then you're not going to need a data file here. And instead, your connection details are going to be in these two files. So you have a connection.yaml. That's going to be where you store your non-secret things. So, the URL of where Snowflake is. And then you have this connection.options.yaml, and this is where you store your secrets. So your password for Snowflake or whatever would live in here. For DuckDB, there's no secrets. It's just on your file, so it's just an empty file. But these things are created automatically for you, so you don't have to manage these. When you go to the UI and create a new source, they're going to be created for you.
Super clear. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I've now added 2 tables, and Evidence has processed these tables for me. It's cached this data. So now I want to go and make a report based on these sources. So I'm going to delete everything that's in here, make a fresh start. Okay, so I've got an empty page, and I'm going to say, welcome to the Jaffel Shop. And I'm now going to write a SQL query. So I'm going to go triple backtick, and that's because that's the markdown syntax for a code fence. It's going to be a SQL code fence, and I'm going to do customers. And I'm going to say select star from, and the folder is called Jaffel Shop. So I'm going to say Jaffel Shop and dot customers. And the reason it's customers is because I've named this file customers.sql. And then save and make sure I'm showing the queries. Okay, so this query is run and it's returned the data for me into the page. So next, let me display some of this data. So I'm going to create a data table to display it. Data table, data equals, and then I use these curly braces because it's a query. And I type in the name of the query, data equals customers, and then I close the component. Okay, great. So I have a data table, and it's showing the data from customers. It's showing me the names of the customers, when they made the orders, how many orders each customer's made, and their lifetime value. And if I look here, I can also go see all the customers, all the different pages. I can download it to a CSV. I can go look at the table in full screen if I want to see more information. But this isn't super interesting. So I'm going to go and do some analysis on the orders table. So I'm going to go SQL, and let's do orders, or maybe sales per week. So I'm going to go select, and then, I'm going to do this date trunk. And it's not called occurred at, it's actually called, I actually don't know what it's called. I think maybe I look at the DBT docs. Orders, it's called order date. Order date as week, some amount as sales from Jaffel Shop orders. Group by one, order by one. Great. Okay, and I go back to evidence, and I should have a new query. Oh, but I misspelled it. Let me change that. Sales per week. Okay, great. I've got my query. I can see the SQL that wrote it, and I can see the data that's coming back. So let me visualize this. I'm going to use maybe an area chart, and then this is all right. It's already, Copilot's already predicted the right syntax for me. So I have an area chart with evidence. Very cool. Probably needs a title. So let me give it a title. I'm going to call it title sales per week. And maybe I don't want an area chart. Maybe I want a bar chart instead.
I just want to say something that it's crazy because you don't write that much things to generate a table or to generate a graph. The syntax is really light, actually. The
Yeah, it's
only
pretty
ones,
compact.
yeah, the only
23
ones.
lines of code for a report. That's
Mhm.
pretty powerful. We think of evidence as a declarative language. You say what you want rather than having to go into the low-level code to describe what you want. And part of that's because we try and make it so that the charts look good out of the box. You don't have to do lots of configuration on top of the charts in order to use it. Okay.
Okay, and or something else is that right now you know how to do a bar chart, you know how to do an area chart, but let's imagine that may I want to use evidence and I don't know the syntax. So where I could go to see this?
Good question. So if you go to our docs, then we have a comprehensive list of all of our components. So there's a big list here, and you can see all the different kinds of components. So area charts, bar charts, scatter charts, funnel charts. Most of the reports, the chart types that you can imagine, you'd need maps. And then you can also add UI components as well. So sometimes it's helpful to be able to present more information to the user so that they can understand what's going on. It's like documentation in line with the data, which is really helpful. And then the
Okay,
final set of things that you can add is also inputs. So you can add inputs so that users can interact with the data. So if you want to have a drop down, they can then see data from a specific category, or you could have a date range, and then they could filter for specific dates.
okay, great. So I will share then the link to the chat. So thank you. I will let you continue the presentation. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good. All right, I think maybe I'll do one more thing and then wrap it up, which is I'll just add a input component to this website. So if we go to the docs, I want to add a date range to this chart so that users can filter for which dates they want. So I'm going to go down to the date range, and it tells me what the syntax is for the date range. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put this date range in here. Okay, I need to give it a name. I'm going to call it, maybe just call it date range. The data, I need to put in a query, so I'm going to give it this query. And I need to tell which column has the dates in it, and that's my column called week. And so I go back to evidence, and I can see that it's created me a drop-down here, which shows me the different dates that I have in here. But I haven't connected this to my data yet. So at the moment, if I change anything, nothing's going to happen, because I need to change the date range so that it is used in my SQL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where, and I'm going to say order date between, and then I'm going to use the input from the date range. So I'm going to go inputs, because it's an input, dot date range dot start and inputs dot date range dot end. Wow, Copilot is very good. And then I'm going to hit save. So now, if I then select a specific range, maybe last 12 months, then it will filter for just that data, or last 7 days, just that data. Cool. So I've hooked it up, and I've been able to select, all time or some subset of the data. There we go, back to all time.
That was pretty crazy. So can you explain again how the input is working?
Yeah,
The
that's a good question.
syntax with the dollar input and range start, and how does it work?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So what I've done here is, so I've got my sales per week query, and I've added this where clause. And whenever evidence sees this $sign and then asks for an input, it's going to look for the name for any inputs that you have. And this date range is an input that I have. And I called my input date range. So I'm saying, okay, I want to go get the date range. And I want specifically to get the start of the range and the end of the range. And if I then look at the query, you can see that it's configured it to use values that are already selected by the user, which is the whole range. But if I wanted to select a different set of range, I select that, and the range updates. So the start date is corresponding to the date that's in the dropdown.
Thank you. It's pretty clear.
Nice. Kevin, do we have some questions in the chat?
For now, I don't think we have questions. It means that you're really clear, that everybody understands everything. So
I saw a question from Vincent, perhaps.
I don't know why I don't see the questions.
So I have a question here, which is, I don't know, maybe I can click on it and it will show it. Maybe not. So the question is the jaffleshop.orders in the SQL statement linked to the table in the DuckDB file or the SQL file in the folder? So the jaffleshop.orders in the SQL statement is linked to the table in the folder. So it's the SQL file in the folder here. So the reason why my syntax here is called jaffleshop.customers is because this folder is called jaffleshop, and the SQL file is called customers. So if I change this, it happens that this is named customers and this is also named customers. But if I maybe changed this to be a different name, then I would be changing this name as well.
Vincent, is it clear enough?
Great. I think he asked that question maybe 5 minutes ago. I missed it. So hope that was useful. Someone else has said as well, you can also use the VS Code extensions. You can use the slash command. So evidence has slash commands. So if you type a slash, it will then give you which components are available. So let's say I wanted to maybe add a new type of chart. It tells me which charts I can have. Okay, so maybe I'll make a line chart, and then it's ready for me. So if I then put in sales per week, and sales, then it's going to create me a line chart of the same thing.
Okay, great. So I don't see the other questions. Do you see other questions?
No, I think we're good. So maybe I'll stop sharing my screen. Kevin, it was so good to have me on.
So all the pleasure was for me, because evidence is such a nice tool, and I think that some people of my community wanted to see how it works and how they can use it for their future works.
Absolutely. Well, pleasure was all mine also.
Okay, so guys, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to add Archie to your contact, or add the Slack channel. I will share it on the LinkedIn page on the commentary. And it was a pleasure to see you guys. So
Absolutely.
don't hesitate to see again the live if you have questions or you're wondering how Archie did, because it was a bit fast. But as you could see, you can use evidence with DBT and with DuckDB. It was a simple and quick example, but you can go way further to create data products, to do some data quality, and so on. So, guys, see you. Bye.